Hello, good afternoon. Welcome. I will introduce you Jessica Delay, who's going to be monitoring the chat and attendees and to present formally our presenters and the session that you are enjoying today. Jessica?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. We'd like to welcome you to the Teachers Engaging Families to Spark an Interest in Early Literacy at Home presentation. This will be presented by Dr. Janice Edwards, consultant with Kids Comprehensive Services and Professional Development Coordinator for DC Child Care Connections, and Brenda Harris, who is Chief Executive Officer of Kids Comprehensive Services. During this presentation, attendees must have the video turned off and remain muted unless your participation is required by the presenters. You can use a chat to type your comments and questions for this presentation, and I will be managing the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, I will read aloud the questions and presenters will be able to answer them. So I'd like you to enjoy this presentation. Thank you.
All yours, Ms. Harris.
Brenda, unmute.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Jessica. And welcome to Teachers Engaging Families in Early Literacy. So our objectives today are to review the importance of families as a child's first teacher. We're also going to identify early literacy skills to be reinforced at home, and we're going to use our early learning standards. We're also going to decide, hopefully, at least 10 activities that you can take away and use as early as tomorrow. So first, let's start with this statement that we all know as educators. Families are their children's first teacher. What do you think when you hear this? And I know a lot of us are also parents. So feel free to unmute yourself or write in the chat of what thoughts come to mind when you see this sentence.
Our first learning, I was just going to say our first learning happens at home, and it really takes a village to raise a child.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Dave wrote exactly right, and Beatrice wrote, parents are the foundation to children's learning. We are all models for everything. And I like that term about us being a village. And Ms. Naira wrote, absolutely, parents are the first teacher. So I guess you agree, Ms. Naira.
Absolutely.
So Doc, why don't you tell us some research around
that was the one thing that I had looked at. I mean, the statement, you know it in your heart, you believe it, but I wanted to know, has there ever been any research on it? And the most recent I could find was done at Harvard. There was a family study done, family research project done, and it was actually a while ago, 2008. And the research found 5 things. High involvement predicted gains in literacy performance. It was a 5-year study. And if the parents were involved, the children maintained the gains that they had made. All of that hard work that we do, they maintained it. If you can get those parents involved. So number 1, high involvement predicted the gains. Number 2, as the families became more involved in the literacy, the children's performance increased, which I thought was interesting. So it means don't stop just because the first time you tried it, it didn't work. As the families became more involved, the literacy performance increased. Number 3, the greatest gains in families was in families that had less than high school education. And I thought that was interesting. We always think it's going to be the greatest gains will be in the families with the most education. But the greatest gains were in families that involved themselves when the mother of the family or father had the least amount of education. Usually it was less than high school education. The children really did make the most gains. Number 4, Family involvement increased the children's attitude. The children became more positive as their families became more involved. They became more positive about literacy. Somebody's got it already, got the key to this one. And schools with high family involvement have also had high child performance and achievement. High family involvement went along with high performance and achievement in their children. And we work so hard for what we do in their classrooms. We just have to remember that it's got to be, what is that, in rowing, you got to have two pedals, two oars going. Someone wrote, I think earlier, that it takes a village. Well, the village has to include the family. So how important it is. And the research stands out saying that. And think about it. The first time the children learn to speak, even if we often say the children are with us a long, long time, and that's true. But the first voice they hear is from where? From someone in that family. Those are the first language that they're going to hear. So that's how important that homeschool connection. Ms. Harris, remember the statistics of the brain development? How much brain development is done before those children ever get to, even before the age of 3, how much?
80% of the child's brain is developed by the time they're age 3. So that when they come to us, some of us that are preschoolers, I know some people are birthed to 3, they have 80% of their brain development. Also, before we move on, I just want to reiterate, when we talk about families, we are talking about 2-gen families, meaning 2-generational, or we have to really think outside the box of just a mother and a father, because we know there's a lot of grandparents, aunts and uncles, neighbors that also will help the children build their literacy development. So now we're going to watch a video and just kind of take some notes, and then I want you to tell us what you think.
Layla's really happy to see you.
Look. He's sitting to read a book.
Do you want to read a book?
Okay, there's one book. There's 2 books.
Here's one.
You want it?
You're awake now.
And me wanted, and I wanted too.
You are so excited to see him.
Look at now.
Look now, you have more.
Now look.
I noticed, Claire. Tell me about your picture.
Now can you please color in the rest?
You'd like me to color in the rest? Which part?
I like to color too. Big and little one.
The big one and the little one?
I want to color.
You want to color?
What do you want to play?
Where's the lift?
What's the lift?
Where's the lift? The lift. The lift must be there.
The lift must be there? Are you talking about this or are you talking about a toy?
A lift. A lift.
You can show me what you mean. I'll follow you. You can show me what you mean. Oh, that's a big chair, Julia. I'm going to go with Layla. Want to come?
This is an elevator.
Oh, the lift. The elevator. We're going to pretend this is the elevator?
Yeah.
Okay. You tell me what to do. See, you're going up? You're going up, up, up.
I'm going down.
Oh, now you're going down.
I'm down.
And you came out of the lift.
I'm going in the lift again.
Back in the lift. Julia, you gonna go in too?
Once upon a time, a little old pony and a little old pony went out into the woods, but in those woods lived a gunny hog.
A gunny hog?
Yeah.
What's a gunny hog?
That's a bunny who hops around.
Oh, and then what happened?
And then he tried to eat them.
Eat what?
Eat the ponies.
Oh no.
I think how important it is to respond to kids when they're talking to you, and it's not always easy, especially when they're beginning to talk. And I was noticing how those caregivers really knew those kids, because I think about my son a lot of times. I can't always understand what he's saying, and so, but he keeps saying it over and over until I respond or either repeat what he says. And I think it has to be correct too, because this morning he kept saying Biden, and we were like, Joe Biden? But he kept saying it, and then we realized, oh, vitamin. But like with the, when the girl went to the teepee, and the teacher was trying to figure out what she was saying, like that's what we had to do, was go to the kitchen and look around, like at the surroundings to figure out what he's saying. But it's just so cute, the new talkers and the different ways that they say things, and but just how important it is to let them know that you're listening and trying to understand what they say.
I was looking at the same thing, and I remember when my son was basically saying, you're not validating me right now. Like, I'm over here telling you exactly what I need, and you're not responding the way I need you to, so I'm going to melt down right now. And he started crying his eyes out, and I'm like, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Help. And all I remember is my wife coming in and saying, hey, Micah, can you show me what you need? And I'm like, and he gets up, takes her hand, he walks over. I'm like, is that simple? Sorry. So basically, it's just learning that they actually do know what they want, what they need. You know, it's just really taking the time, right, to just ask, hey, can you show me what you need? Because they know, they see it, you know. So I do remember too that the repetitive part where they just repeat the same word over and over and over and over again. It's just like, okay, you know ball, you know ball, you know ball. What kind of ball is this now? You know, is this a football? Is this a basketball? Ball. I'm like, oh, okay, so you know it's a ball. Okay, I'm gonna leave you alone now. I got it. So, yeah.
But did you notice how much interesting language he got out of you when he kept saying ball?
He's learning new words as I was speaking.
But ball is it a basketball?
Is it a
You know a new
basketball?
word. It's called ball.
Right.
Now you're saying ball again.
Right. Oh,
The
you
color,
mean the basketball?
what you can
Right.
do with it, dribble, throw.
That was a
yeah.
conversation.
Right. Thanks, Dad. You had a full-out conversation with me. Ah, I did.
So thoughts about the video? And we use that as an example because you could see what went on in the classroom, as well as it was an opportunity for the families to learn from each other. And I know that it's during the pandemic, but also the teacher got an opportunity to facilitate conversation with the parents. And it seemed like it was very engaging, and it was a dialogue. It wasn't her talking down, it was her talking to. So it was a great example. Dr. Edwards, you were going to say something?
I was just listening to, as I was listening, remembering the importance of active listening and how you could tell that not only was the teacher an active listener, but the parents were active listeners too. So the importance of knowing, using all of our communication skills when we talk with parents or we listen to parents. The other part was how important it is to involve the males in the family. It can be the grandfather, it can be the uncle, it can be the neighbor, whoever's important in that child's life. They can explain to us things that are going on. Remember, we learn from the families about the language that the children use, what kinds of language is used in the family, what kinds of things are important. How do you know, like I was gonna say, I saw that fit right into some of our curriculum activities when we do the ball study. And with that father, I bet you that would be really a good way to hook him in, to even ask him to come back in to the ball study. So as you're listening, taking notes, how can I engage this family in a more active, and we right now, because of the pandemic, you know, the rules that we have for pandemic, it's not it's not as engaging in person as it was, but now we have to be creative as to how to engage families with our Zoom in different ways. And so hopefully at the end, you will talk about ways that you've discovered to engage your families in discussion. See, I was going to see, did anyone write anything that they noticed in the chat still about how the motivation from the families and how the father was determined, you know, he was determined to listen. He didn't give up. And he remembered the things that he had said, that the child had said, how many times he had said it. He just kept repeating it. Look at their faces. How do they feel about talking about their own children, each of those family members? How did they feel? What did you see in their faces? Anybody can unmute or write in the chat. What did you learn about their feelings?
Well, the mother that talked about Joe Biden appeared to be very animated. She also gave the father feedback about, look at all the words you could, how you can expand that vocabulary.
How you could expand that.
And in the chat, somebody wrote, Doc.
Miss Holstein, Miss Susan Holstein wrote, they seem so pleased, and they even seemed a bit surprised in how meaningful it was when someone else heard it. The parent that responded to the father who was talking, or the uncle, whoever it was, responded. Everyone looked so excited about it. I mean, that's the real positiveness to know that the families were all engaged and excited about talking about their children's literacy learning. Great, thank you.
It was also a sense of understanding of their child, and not and less blaming, you know. So I thought that was very vulnerable of the parents, especially when you don't know each other. So I thought that was very vulnerable of them, and it allowed them to open up more. It allowed them to learn more from each other, because students don't just learn from each other, parents do as well. Different families.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that, how accepting those parents were of each other. Nobody laughed when the father kept saying ball, he kept saying ball. They all listened and leaned in. And then the mother, the female said, well, probably he was trying to, you know, it could stand for many things. Oh my, thank you. That was a great, great observation, how understanding they were of each other.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. So now we're going to focus on the DC Early Learning Standards. Hopefully you received it in your app. Your Hoover app had a copy of the handout. We're going to focus on standards 10, 11, and 12 today. And it can be found on page 26 in your Early Learning Standards book if you have one, or on page 26 in your PDF, which was the handout. So the three standards that we're going to focus on today are: demonstrates comprehension of printed materials read aloud, hears and discriminates the sounds of English and a home language, 12, writes letters and sounds. And I don't know how many people attended the session prior to this, but I know we focused a lot on number 10, demonstrates comprehension of printed materials read aloud. Also, we wanted to remind you that it does align with all your curriculums for teaching strategies, as we know, as creative curriculum. An example that we give is it also corresponds to the objectives of development and learning, 18, 15, and 19. So remember that the standards do align with your curriculum. And it's on page 26. It starts standards 10. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick review because I know everybody knows the standards, but I want us to all be at the same starting place. So as we know that in our standards, that there are 9 domains or areas of development. The area of development we're focused on, because we're speaking about literacy, is literacy. So that's the area of development. In our early learning standards, It's number 10. So we're going to focus again, remind you 10, 11, and 12, but this is number 10. And 10 is demonstrates comprehension of printed materials read aloud. Each standard also has indicators. So we're going to focus on the indicators for preschool and pre-K today. So the indicator for preschool is uses some words and or concepts from the text to talk about a story, poem, for informational text read aloud. And we just had a great demonstration of that in the prior session. Each standard and indicator also has an example. So the example is what we might observe a child doing. So this child, after hearing the story, they were able to retell the story, and they even used some of the teacher's gestures. Perhaps they would use some of the teacher's vocabulary. And in this particular book, which was Old MacDonald, they really did some of the sounds as well. Also, for each indicator, there's an example, but there's also a supportive practice that we call teaching tips. And that's just 2 examples, and most of you could give us many, many more examples of what a teacher might do in the classroom. This can be found and is a very important part of your early learning standards on page 7. So if you're jotting down any notes, remember you can go back and look at this. This will tell you how the early learning standards are set up, and it's on page 7 in your manual. So we're going to start with standard 10, and it demonstrates comprehension of printed materials read aloud. So this is standards 10. And remember, today's workshop is about that home-school connection.
The picture that we looked at, first we looked at what you did in your classroom, and you were reading the text aloud to the children that were grouped around you. Now that text demonstrates comprehension of printed materials read aloud. That was in your classroom. Then if they were preschool children, you might have them, the children may use some words and or the text to talk about a story or a poem or informational text that was read. If they are preschool children, they will talk with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details of the story. And the other part on this, even though we started at preschool, these standards begin at infancy and they go all the way across to preschool exit, and they connect with the DC Common Core kindergarten standards all the way across to the end. So they go, this is the development. Then we're only focusing on preschool and pre-K exit, which are preschool 3-year-olds, approximately 3 to 4, and pre-K exit the 4 to 5s when they leave our early childhood programs. Next slide. Supportive practices, if you remember, we called them teacher tips. And what are some teacher tips? Some teacher tips for this standard might be reminding you to ask questions. And we're always remembering, we're reminding you to use open-ended questions and ask follow-up questions about a story that was read, or ask the child to retell the story. You might provide an opportunity in your dramatic play area, an opportunity for the children to act out a story like the 3 Bears. Next slide. Now, this is your opportunity to work with us. We want you to design an activity for families to reinforce what you did in your classroom. Remember, you were reading the story about and checking on comprehension of printed material. In the chat, or we can unmute, but in the chat, if you want to write, I want you to think about, can you think of number 1, an activity to support this standard? Number 1, what is the goal of the activity? Number 2, what materials might be needed? And then how will you receive feedback from your families? Remember this, anything on this book like this, these are activities for our families. How will you get your families involved? We want to have family involvement now. How can we carry over what you've done such a fantastic job in your classroom but we wanted to carry over into the home to spark interest in the home. Okay. You may write or unmute.
Okay, so one activity, thank you, Ms. Kathy. Ms. Kathy, it was a home activity can be for families to put on a play together. So Ms. Kathy, I'm gonna push us all because we're all colleagues and educators. What would be your objective? So you want them to put on a play, but what's your objective when they do that?
To be able to kind of retell the story, whatever story that they read. So the goal would be to get the child to retell parts of the stories.
Thank you, excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you. I want us to think about what our objective is. Great. And Beatrice wrote, create book bags to send home with a list of follow-up activities and ask parents to send a picture. Okay, so when we create these book bags, Ms. Burrows, what's our objective?
The objective for this would be to expose children to new printed materials and to also see what their comprehension is depending on which activity they use to follow up.
Okay.
Excellent. Any other ideas of what we could do? And remember the early learning standards. Remember, this is after you did a lesson in your classroom, and we're going to add that section of, and this is how I'm going to extend it to the home.
Very good. Great. Two great examples. Yeah. Does anybody else want to share? Before I turn around and share.
Okay, I think Dr. Edwards, you had an example.
I had an example, and I have gotten, I've done this a few times, and my examples are things that first the classroom activity was, remember, it was comprehension of printed materials. And in the classroom, I read Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. And this is one of the kids' favorite, even between pre-K, preschool and pre-K. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom is still one of the favorite stories. They just love being able to do this. So I've read it and reread it maybe three times now in the classroom. So I put it in a package for the parents. So the book in the package, the goal of the activity is for the children now. First, I want the parents to read it again. The goal of the activity will now be for the children to be able to retell the story looking at the pictures, to be able to look at the pictures and retell the story. What I've included in my take-home bag is a simple metal tray. And from the dollar store, I bought some magnetic letters. Sometimes I even see them at the Giant. And the magnetic letters actually stick onto so the parent can use the letters as the child, or the child can use the letters as they retell the story. They stick onto the magnetic tray. Always when I send home these activities, I always send home a second book just in case, because everybody doesn't like the same book I like. For example, some of the children may like the ABC books. There are ABC books of trucks, ABC books of animals. ABC, this is the second one I have, the ABC book of the very hungry caterpillar. So kind of thinking about individualizing the take-home bags. I think someone in the chat talked about this take-home bag. And this take-home bag is very simple. All it is a plastic bag so I can see what it's in. And I might put it in the child's cubby. It's individualized and it might have a question in it also. I might put something in there so that telling the parents that what I want them to do with it. But these are the materials, very simple materials. A tray with magnetic letters in the book and an extra book. So it's not a lot, but it's a good activity An easy activity to reinforce at home.
And another way this can be done is using a digital book, because haven't gone to the session, and we know that a lot of books are on YouTube, a lot of books are at the library, the parents can borrow them digitally. So if sometimes you might feel like the parents might not have access, or sometimes I know some programs might say, I can't keep buying books and sending them home every week or every month. Remember, because of technology, we can still meet the same goal. So don't let that be a limit if you think that you can't send the books home on a routine basis. Was somebody getting ready to unmute and say something?
Dr. West put something in. Dr. West, the children or the scholars will be able to create a visual, wait, I just disappeared, Dr. West, I was reading, okay, create a visual representation which will retell a favorite scene of the story that was told in the class. The materials needed, art supplies, very good. Feedback, once completed, the family can help the scholars by writing an explanation of what they represented. Take pictures and videos, then post them to the web and social media or text. And many of you are using social media now to engage with your families. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. West. Excellent, excellent. Act it out, getting our kids to act it out, and they love to act it out.
Okay, and I hope some of you are recording some of these activities so that you'll have a little library, a toolkit of activities that you can share. And again, sometimes I know I'll hear an idea and then I'll expand it. I'll say, oh, for my families, this is a better fit. So don't feel like that you're pigeonholed in an activity you might hear. Think about how you can make it your own. Okay, so now we're going to go to standard 11. Hears and discriminates sounds of English and or home language. That can be found on page 28. Remember, we're using our early learning standards. And remember also, another tip, we can send this home with electronically to families, because we want families to have access as well. Because remember, we're trying to engage families in literacy.
And the one thing I was going to make sure that we remember that we sometimes call this standard in the early learning standards, it says discriminate sounds of English language. We might call it phonological awareness. Okay, that just means, but it's the beginning of sound. So the way it's written in the early learning standards, it's really very general, and it gives you a lot of activities that you can do with your families. The ability to hear and identify and participate and manipulate the sounds of spoken language, to hear and manipulate the sounds. So you can do it by rhymes, remember alliteration, beginning sounds, lots of different ways. So let's see, the standard was 11. If it was in preschool, the child might be able to play with language, experimenting with beginning and ending sounds. Okay. If you're writing for a pre-K exit, the child might be able to show awareness of separate words in a sentence. Okay. Supportive practices for standard 11. Remember, this is teacher tips. You probably are already doing this. Call attention to particular words in your morning message by highlighting them. And I know every day you get up and you figure out which one of these words am I going to highlight. So that's you're dealing with supportive practices for standard 11, which was what? Hearing and discriminating sound. You might read a short poem and ask the children whether they can hear some rhyming words in it. And I think sometimes we're a little shy for using our old-fashioned poems, but I found the children don't mind. They like those old-fashioned poems. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. And some of them might be, we have to change some of the words because we've learned that some of the words are not necessarily appropriate for what we now know or how we should be treating and talking to each other. But the rhymes can be used if with a little bit of thought. You want to talk to children about how words can be broken into smaller parts. You can use their names. For example, and here is, and clapping their names is one thing that you might do a lot of. And this child's name in this story was Shakira. Clap it, Shakira. My name is Janice, and it's much easier, Janice. Or Rayshawn. Now you may take a longer word and you might do umbrella, for example, with the children. Umbrella. Have them do it by themselves. How many claps did you hear? You might start with how many claps before they know how many parts of the word. How many claps did you hear? Okay. And so I was breaking it down into smaller pieces so that we can remember how we might explain this to our families. So now we're ready for the family activity. For early learning standard 11, hears and discriminates sounds of English and or home language. You're going to write your activity in the chat. You're going to include, remember the same things, goals and materials, and how will you know from your how will you receive the feedback from your families?
So feel free to unmute or write in the chat.
You can do a game of Hungry Monster or Hungry Robot, where you know, the family can create a monster out of his box, and they're feeding, the kids are feeding the monster the words that the monster says. So what family member is the monster, and they actually, you know, they sound like a monster, and they're breaking these words down. So for instance, they'll say like, I want to eat like a cupcake, and like kids will have to listen to that monster voice and like distinguish what they're saying and then feed that to the monster. Like I guess the objective or the goal would be for the kids to be able to listen to or segment words.
Segment words. Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. That's a great activity. That sounds like fun. Like you might really get the families engaged in that monster. Like our kids nowadays are but engaged by monsters and things that are exciting. The excitement of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Excellent.
My students really love the robot one.
The robot one. I was going to say, I was just the other one. I didn't write that down. I wrote the monster. I just did write the robot down, but that's great. The robot one. They'll like that. Yeah. How does the robot say? He put the cake. What did he put in the bag? What did he eat? Right. Great. Great job. Thank you. Good sharing. Anybody else? Some other ideas for, remember this rhyming one? I mean, this one has lots of pieces to it. Remember, it's got rhyming games, the segmenting game we just saw, the syllables, the clapping game, lots of different things that you can send home with your families depending on where your children are. Any suggestions?
Yes. Identifying family names, like how many parts are to the name, and then
family names, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Doing
and
that.
Then, yeah, like maybe they can record it and bring it back to school, or they can some type of graph or something like that where they can come back and say, oh, these are my family members' names, and this is how many parts are.
How many syllables are in there? How many parts? Yeah, I keep using the word syllable. How many parts are in the family? Excellent activity. And you broke it down to something that was really meaningful to the family. It wasn't, you know, we use the segment and we could just say how many parts, and the family really will understand it. Excellent. Thank you. Great job. From Miss Monk says, play a game of I have who has sounds. Who has heard the sound? A game of I have who has sounds. Ms. Monk, do you want to unmute and explain a little bit more of I have who has sounds? How do we play that?
So basically it's a letter game. And so we have, there's these cards and the letter will be at the top. There's a picture to foster. that letter. So just in case the kids do not recognize that letter, they have a picture of, so say like I have a card with a turtle on it. There will be a T in the corner, a picture of a turtle. So I'll say, I have turtle, or I'll say, I have turtle, and then turn the card over. There'll be another letter at the top with another picture. Who has watermelon? So then, you know, the child will look at their card, see if they have that watermelon. If they do have it, they will pick it up and say, I have watermelon, and then flip the card over, and there'll be
flip it over.
Another letter. And then you keep
I like that. Mm-hmm. And Miss Hillary put in the initials. You all must be familiar with this game because she put in initials IHWH. I have, who has.
Absolutely. I didn't want to do the initials first because I'm like, people probably don't know what that is.
We didn't know what it was, but it sounds like a fun a game that we can engage families in. Remember, we're trying to think now, how do we engage families and stuff? We know the terms, and we know how to do. We're great in the classroom, but we now want to get those families engaged. And this sounds like a fantastic way, just a fun way to get the families smiling and laughing. Who has that sound? Very good. Thank you. Anyone else want to share with us? Ms. Learn and Ms. Flora agreed that it was a fun game. She enjoys it also. Very good.
Did you have an example?
I just was going to example some of the books that are, and I always have the books that I like reading to the children that are rhyming books. Oh, there it is. And I'm holding up one that I just learned about, Frog on a Log. And what I send home is a book. Remember, I'm one strong on sending books home with the children. And then pictures of the rhyming words. And I might, for example, hey, frog, sit on a log, said the cat. But I don't want to sit on a log, said the frog. Logs are all hard and uncomfortable. I don't want, said the cat. You are a frog, so you must sit on a, and the child has to pick the picture, because I made pictures of a frog and a log. They have to pick the picture of the log. So I will send home pictures, the book plus pictures that go, and the child would have to pick out the picture. Someone said that would be a good, she gave us a good idea, a parent make and take workshop. Parents can make their own games. Yeah, excellent, excellent. And it really is much more meaningful if they make their own games to take home after the meeting. And even if we have to do it via Zoom, we have to sort of figure out how do you show the directions to make sure they're seen and make and take. And now we can actually have small groups of parents in our centers and into our schools so they can do it. That's excellent. Make and take, and they will love playing it at home. Thank you. Good sharing.
And that brings up another idea that perhaps, I know sometimes the family service workers, some of you programs have family service workers that work directly with the parents. You could make up kits and share some of these same activities with family service workers. You don't remember, we're talking about the village. So we really have to expand the way we're thinking if we really want to reinforce literacy throughout the day, in the evening, and on the weekend. So we have to use everybody in our village to expand these concepts that we're teaching in the classroom. So don't think it's just you. You know, we have to think really broad and wide, because we really want to make sure literacy is reinforced all day long, every day.
Excellent.
So our last standard, you know, there are many standards that we're going to review today, is rights, letters, and words. Rights, letters, and words. And it's on page 30 in your Early Learning Standards Manual.
The developmental progression is for standard 12. Remember, the standard is rights, letters, and words. At the preschool level, you will see it. The child can use letters, like letter-like forms, letter strings, some letter combinations that are words. The preschool level, the child begins to invent spelling while writing to convey a message with prompting and support. So that's that creative, that writing, that we talk about. Okay, supportive practices for standard 12, teacher tips. Ask the children to make signs for the classroom that will help the new children know where each center is located. Make sure that you have writing materials throughout your classrooms. Markers, crayons, pencils, Post-its, index cards, copy paper are available everywhere. Put them in every one of your centers. This writing practice, this standard can be observed in any area in your classroom. Okay. The activity for families. Okay, for writing letters and words. So this one, I'm wondering, can't wait to see what your ideas might be for that one. Write your activity in the chat and include, again, the goals and the materials and how you're gonna get the feedback from your families. Or you can unmute if you just, something popped in your head and you said, I got a great idea already to share the rest of us to know. What else can we do?
This is for a child. I had a student that was struggling with letter formation. So I presented this activity. Basically, we do it in school too. It's called graphics practice. And before students get to form letters, we create these stories and we form these things within the story. So a story could be, I was walking one day and I saw all of these apples on the ground. And so I need you to make these apples with me and then we're gonna count all of these apples. So the goal is to have kids to do a round stop for the apple, which is creating a circle or the letter O. Once they get to that stage, they'll be like, oh, the apples we created, that's the letter O. So there's stages in the graphics practice. So I will have parents just start off by saying a little short story. It could be something about what happened in the day to connect to what they did in school, and then draw about it. Another one is we went to the park and I saw these long blades of grass. I need you to help me make this grass. So then you're making slants and then you're saying private speech. So you're saying slant right, slant left as you're doing blades of grass.
Excellent.
So getting private speech and all of those other things as well.
Very good. Incorporating all of the ideas in that. Excellent. Great ideas. Anyone else share something that's been successful?
I have a question for Ms. Monk. Can I ask you a question? And other people might already understand this. How do we share that with families? How do we share that same activity with families? How did you connect it?
So we sent home, not necessarily whiteboards, but we sent home pieces of paper and what do you call that? Not contact sheets, but the sleeves. We were able to easily erase, and it's just like a whiteboard. They got markers, and they got a video of email of graphics practice of what we do inside the class, so they have a visual of how it's supposed to be done and played. And then, of course, the students, because we play this at home, at school, the kids are able to talk about it, and a lot of them are able to tell their parents exactly how we do it at school. So.
Okay.
Great.
And then are you able to get any feedback from your families?
Absolutely. Pictures of progression. They're starting to write letters now, and we get a bunch of pictures that we also post in the classroom. We do positive praises and things like that. So it's really very good, and the parents are super excited. The kids are like forming, letters and all of those things. So yeah, it's great.
I like that. That's a good idea. I like that. Miss Burrows wrote in the, before I talk, Beatrice Burrows wrote in, she likes to use sensory bags with paints in them. You add the paint into a Ziploc bag and have the children trace the letter shape into the paint. Okay, so now, are you going to send home the paint? Miss Burrows, you want to unmute or you want to just write in the chat? Are you going to send home this paint?
Normally when we do things like that, we'll already have the paint bags created.
You have it ready?
Yep, and then just share it with whatever items that they may need. We usually do depending on the child's level, because I work with very young children.
Yes.
So depending on the children's level, they will either give the letters and have them place the bags on top of the letters to try to trace it, or we use the letters as a guide. Like, here, look at the letter and try to write it into the paper.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's pickup time here. Sorry.
No, it's okay. We understand. But I guess I did have a question, and if you could write the answer in the chat. With the families, are they receptive to the paint? And the reason why I'm asking you that is sometimes we're fearful of certain things we have in our myths we might have in our mind that parents don't like certain materials. So I just, if you can, later on, just share with us in the chat, is that a successful one? Because sometimes we do have myths about certain materials that parents might want to stay away from. But because you have experience, you could say, no, they really are receptive to it. And I've tried it and it worked. Because I think sometimes we don't know things and we might make assumptions.
Oh, I agree. And Play-Doh, which I love to give to kids to help with their fine motors. Parents really don't like that. So we try to do the Play-Doh here at school, but like anything that's not actually going to get messy. So if the paint's already in the bag, it's going to work a lot better.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for sharing your real experience with that.
Yeah.
And I think, Doc, you were going to...
It was like what Ms. Burroughs just talked about. The one that I talked about is that I have to be careful with. I'm also a grandparent of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I love Play-Doh, but this is not a favorite in in their house, because what happens, as you know, it's flakes. It gets all over everything. And so a lot of this Play-Doh stays here in our house or goes to their playroom, which has a linoleum floor. But again, the Play-Doh is one of my favorite activities for fine motor, because they really need that squeezing, a 1 and a 2 and a squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Well, the beginning writers really need to use those fine motor muscles, because they don't use them often. I had one funny, we were just signing cards, and the 4-year-old wanted to sign a card, and someone just gave me some good ideas that I really will use with her next time. She asked, what does an M look like? Her name is Margot. And she asked what did the letters look like? And so I had to use the Play-Doh for each of the letters so that she could see what they look like. But I also used my fingers to show her what they look like. But another idea, I just heard about the blades of grass. I'll try that one too. But she really wanted to write, and she did. As I described them, she was able to get the M, the A. She got all the way up to the O was easy, and the T, MARNAOT. I couldn't figure out the R other than the straight line of the R, but she was ready, and I had to use words to explain it. And so often the take-home activity requires a little bit of an adjustment. You take it home, and then you as the parent or grandparent have to do something with it. So I appreciated learning from the teacher who was telling me about the blades of grass, and I will use that.
And also, I wondered if there's any opportunities for the parents to speak to each other like we saw in the video, because I think that's a powerful way for parents and families to learn from each other. And they really value from each other's experience. And it also connects our larger community. And that's what we're trying to do. So I wonder if anybody has been successful at connecting their parents with activities during COVID, because this is in a pandemic. Because I know a lot of times we're doing a lot of things virtual. So how are we getting our parents to connect, even if they're sending us videos or sending us texts, or are there any creative ways that we can connect families that people have been successful with during this time?
One thing we did during COVID was we did a lot of virtual sessions, and we actually mailed out all the materials that they would need for the month for the sessions. And then we did live sessions with their children. So we either did group sessions or one-on-one sessions. In the beginning, it was great. right? And then everybody kind of got burnt out virtually. So then you kind of saw things lagging. They're very excited to be back and have us actually work with their children in person.
Thank you for sharing. And here are some resources. And Ms. Flora wrote she found the Seesaw platform helpful because parents can use it at their own pace. Again, here's some resources. And one of the things we want to encourage the group, if you have a resource that that we can share with families or other practitioners can share with their families, please drop it in the chat. There's so many out there. And I know that we all probably know one or two. So again, we're trying to build everybody's toolkit. We're trying to expand our parents' toolkits. Also, sometimes, as we know, parents will tell us about something that we never heard of that we can share. So this is an opportunity for us to all share with how to engage families so that we can have a strong literacy across the community in the district. And I know we're all in different communities, but these are all our families and our children. I want to thank you today. We're at about 3 minutes. We manage DC Child Care Connections, and we have a Linden Library. It's available to teachers and families, and we have a literacy-rich library. One is located in Northwest at 209 Upshur Street. One is located in Southeast at 2041 MLK Avenue, and it is a service center, 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, and it is available to parents. And
in the chat, remember in the chat, Jessica, did you want us to read this to make sure everyone's looking at it? You have to complete the survey to get your PLU certificate. Please fill out the survey. The link is in the chat. Will it be emailed? You can't copy it. Jessica, Ms. Barrows wants to know, will the link be emailed to her?
Yes, we will make sure that all participants have the link in case you're not able to fill it out at the moment. But thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And you will get your PLU certificate once you fill out the survey.
She said, thank you. Thank you. Well, the time